Rod man. Welcome to another episode of the PHIN Outta Football Podcast. I am your host with the most, B Herbo, and I got my brother from another Rod man in the building with me. We are on the heels of a very eventful 2025 NFL draft. A beautiful draft. It was out in Green Bay. It looked amazing. The energy was, you could feel it through the freaking screen. Part of me wants to go to a draft, but part of me also knows that there's nothing lamer than going to a draft. That is the ultimate sausage party. But by golly, did it look fun. However, um, we have a lot to discuss because of that draft. Because that draft was crazy. Stuff that happened in that draft was crazy. Obviously, the biggest elephant in the room, and we'll get to that shortly. But I know we just wanted to have a stream because we wanted to get an opportunity to recap what the Dolphins did. First round pick, second round pick, the three picks that they had in the fifth round, sixth and seventh. The Dolphins did something that I seen that the NFL did as a totality, where it was if you don't play offensive line and you don't play defensive line, your ass is waiting to get drafted, bro. There was so many trenched, like people who play in the trenches are getting paid because I think the NFL is finally getting away from this fantasy football nonsense, which is let's go get a skill position, let's go get a tight end. Nah, bro. Yeah, you saw a couple of those guys go drafted in the first round, but for the most part, the NFL collectively is saying, bro, let's eat our vegetables before we eat our candy. And the vegetables in question are the dudes that block and the dudes that are trying to get through the guys that are blocking, bro. So we seen a lot of that, bro. What was your thoughts on this draft, bro?
Well, like you said, Herbie, this was probably more of an eventful draft than any of us anticipated, right? But to your point, Herbie, it seems like now teams are understanding that there is a premium on making sure that you build up through the trenches, right? The age old adage in football is that it all starts in the trenches. And you see it, Herbie, come winter, come December, come January, it comes down to being able to run the football, ball control. It comes down to playing good defense. These are the things that matter come postseason. These are the things you're going to need to compete against the elite teams in the NFL. And the Dolphins, for the first time in a long time, at least I felt like we had a December, January draft, right? But I'll get to that when we start talking about the team. Overall, though, this was a very interesting draft, Herbie. But maybe obviously the most interesting thing of all is the Shedeur Sanders fall. I mean, and I'll tell you, Herbie, we were probably amongst a minority, I believe, of people who were
Very
outspoken.
big minority. A very big
We,
minority.
we, we, we were outspoken against Shedeur being a top 10 pick. I still thought he was a late round first pick, second round talent to begin with, right? But man, like when I saw that he didn't go on day two, I thought to myself, "Oh man, we have ourselves a situation in the NFL right now." And the entire the way that it's been received, Herbie, from all angles has been fascinating to me, right? Because people have all these different beliefs on exactly, why he fell, right? And this is just one of those situations to where perception is reality. People are going to believe whatever the hell they want to believe when it comes to this situation, Herbie. And since I'm already talking about it, I'll just get off like my thoughts on it. I was extremely shocked when I seen he didn't go in the second round, Herbie. And I was thinking to myself as a Dolphin fan, we didn't have a third round pick. And we ended up eventually trading down from the fourth round. But I thought to myself, like, man, I know the Dolphins won't do it because of the last thing the Dolphins want, especially when you consider all the drama with Tyreek, when you consider the Jalen Ramsey situation, when you just consider all the chatter that's been going on around the team, to add Shedeur Sanders to that mix, it just wasn't going to happen.
It
No matter
wasn't
how,
gonna
if you
happen.
were if you were a Dolphin fan and you wanted, we still drafted a quarterback, but if you wanted Shedeur, it just wasn't going to happen just because of everything that he brings. And I think that goes in line with exactly what happened with him, right, Herbie? Ultimately, I'm someone who thought like the Browns got a steal, right? They ended up drafting a quarterback in the third round, but in my opinion, I thought the Browns got a steal. But ultimately, Herbie, what the NFL showed you, and people have different theories on this. They say it's collusion. People talk about the pre-draft process, which played a part. People talk about the talent that he had that plays a part. But ultimately, Herbie, what the NFL showed you was they didn't think he was that guy. Like that's what I took from it. The NFL, because here's the thing, Herbie, even if in the league teams don't like you, your bravado, what you bring to the table, if your bravado can match your talent, you will always be taken. They will always select you because there is just something to be said about talent that cannot be denied. Now, like I said, I thought Shedeur was a late first round. I thought he was going to go to the Steelers, Herbie. We waited on draft night to see if the Steelers would get him, and he didn't go. So when I saw that, I thought to myself, like, all right, it's grist for him in the first round. But what the NFL showed you, and they spoke about it, and people have to understand. And I'm not trying to knock Shedeur here, but this is just the reality of the world that we live in. And this is probably something that people don't want to hear, but it's just reality. The idea of fairness is a facade. In this world, everybody wants to talk about what's fair and what's not like that shit to me. It's a facade. So ultimately, when you are moving in this world, people may put things in your favor that you may deserve, may not deserve, and sometimes people will take away from you whether you deserve to or not. And it's on you to put yourself in a very advantageous situation. And just based on the reports that we heard about Shedeur, team saying that he wasn't interviewing well, he didn't show up. He didn't play at the Senior Bowl. He didn't show up for the workouts. There's something to be said about putting yourself in the best position to succeed. And
Nah, for
I
sure.
and in my opinion, from just the things that I've heard, I wasn't there. I didn't walk every step of the way. It didn't sound like to me, Shedeur and then Dion really felt like they really needed to do that. And then you talk about there's even footage of Dion talking about the teams that Shedeur will go to and not go to. There was just so much surrounding him. When you add to the fact that teams just didn't think the talent matched what he would bring with him, that's what you
Absolutely.
get. That's what
And
you get.
and I'm actually gonna, and that's actually my ultimate point, right? Like I ain't gonna hold you, Rod. You just killed my whole segment, bro. You just took every talking point, bro.
Hey, we
Which,
didn't talk about this
but
before.
the beauty of it is, and this is why you are so good at this, dog. You can say what I want to say in 1,000 less words, bro. I have to be very long winded. You cut right to the fucking point, dog. You are filet mignon. There's no fat anywhere, bro. New York strip. There's no fat on that meat, bro, at all, bro. So, let me get it from my side, right? Because I actually wanted to break it down into three sections, right? And you mentioned two of the three sections that I was going to get at too. One, you mentioned the aspect of supply and demand. And then two, you mentioned the aspect of what Dion and Shedeur, the role that they played into this ultimately, right? And the lack of accountability behind that. But to me, and this is the thing that gets largely under talked about, under under the discussion never really revolves around this because this discussion can never revolve around this, right? Because the people who are in charge of the discussion make sure that it doesn't get talked about at all, right? The most important or the biggest reason why Shedeur Sanders fell in the draft is because of the media. And I say that to say this. The media put it out there that Shedeur Sanders was a top 5 pick, a top 10 pick, a first rounder. Look at who are the people that are saying these things and look who they work for. They're working for publications that have to sell a story. ESPN, Fox Sports 1, CBS Sports. Everybody involved with those places were saying he's a top 5 pick. He's gonna be this, he's gonna go this high. They built a imaginary storyline that was never the case. Like me and you, we figured that out because we listen to so much football, we consume so much football, and we have so many outside independent thinkers who are not afraid to have a serious conversation as it pertained to who Shedeur was as a prospect. I was listening to the Ryan Russillo podcast, and I think it's a QB coach. I think his name is like Quincy something, right? Like he's worked with a lot of QBs. He's famous for really working with Josh Allen and making him a better quarterback. That dude was on the Ryan Russillo podcast and said, "Bro, I have a 6th-round grade on Shedeur Sanders." He's just one of the few people that's not afraid to go against Dion. He's not afraid to say what he really feels because all of these people have to sell a story. ESPN has to sell a story. Their job is to talk about the draft. We can't talk about a draft if we don't have nobody going in the top 5. We have to put a quarterback there, even if we know that's bullshit.
Yep.
We have to sell that story. The biggest example and the most egregious example of this is 2, 3 years ago in the Malik Willis draft. Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Sam Howell, Dennis Ritter.
Ugh.
They were trying to sell Malik Willis as a number 6 overall pick to the Seahawks that year. They
That's
were
mad.
trying to sell Malik Willis as a first round top 5 pick. They tried so hard to sell that. Tried so hard. And then what happened? A couple of days before the draft, okay, maybe he doesn't go in the first round. After trying to sell Malik Willis as and mocking Malik Willis and continually to mock him in the top 10, he didn't get drafted to the third round. The media is often not in lockstep with what the NFL thinks. The media made Shedeur Sanders a top 5 pick. The media made Shedeur Sanders a first rounder. The NFL never did. The NFL will tell you what they think of a player very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
We thought Will Johnson was a locked top 15 pick. He didn't get drafted to day 2. I didn't have a single, not one mock draft that had Will Johnson, cornerback from Michigan, out of the first round. If you find one, send it to me. I'll shut the hell up. The NFL does not tell these people anything until a week out. That's why a week out, you started hearing that Shedeur Sanders is not going to be in the first round, because that's the first time that the NFL is starting to be serious. They're not blowing smoke. There's no smoke screens. There's none of that. But the people who are consuming these things are not privy to that information. They're going by what they're told and what, more importantly, they're sold. They're sold on the idea. So, of course, it's a draft fall if you, for 3 months, expect this person to go to some place. But is it a real draft fall if nobody ever thought of that to begin with? So that's one. The media has, like, all the blame in this. Like, and I get it. You can't sell the draft if you can't sell quarterbacks. That's it. You have to sell quarterbacks. And you can't sell quarterbacks if you're being honest and saying, yeah, we got some third round picks going, dog. That's not how it works. The media created this monster. And then that is twofold. The second half of that is that the monster that they created would also follow Shedeur to the NFL. The reason why Shedeur ultimately fell to the 5th round, the biggest reason is the media, because the NFL, and we didn't even see this. I viewed Shedeur as a starter. I thought that he was a starter at the least. But the NFL does not see him as a starter. The NFL sees him as a backup. The minute that clicked, it all made sense. Why would we draft Shedeur Sanders and everything that comes with for him to be a backup?
Yep.
We could get Dylan Gabriel to do the same thing. We could get Tyler Shuck to do the same thing. You're holding a clipboard. I don't want a million questions about how was Shedeur in camp? How did Shedeur's ball placement look in camp? What was Shedeur eating? Did he have a Gatorade today? Did he have a Snicker bar? Nobody wants to hear that. Why would my starting quarterback want to answer about what the hell Shedeur Sanders did? And that's how teams looked at it. So once that hit me, I'm like, he might. I thought he was going to get undrafted at one point.
It was Herbie. It was starting to look like that. It was starting to look like teams were just going to just give him the big middle finger.
But right? I don't even think that. I think it is if we think you're a backup, because we've seen this. We've seen this with I can't remember the dude's name, and I should have looked it up. That's on me. But the openly gay defensive end, Michael Sam. We've seen it with Michael Sam. The media put it out there that NFL players would not be able to handle a gay dude in the locker room. When any NFL dude that was asked was like, hey, bro, if he could play, he could play. We cool. But the media didn't want that because they couldn't sell that.
Right.
And it got to the point where Michael Sam had his career ruined before he ever had a chance, because he was not good enough to justify him being on your team because of the circus that he comes with. A bigger example for the same position, Tim Tebow. You know these white folks wanted to have Tim Tebow on a roster. You know they did. But it just couldn't happen because you do not have, nobody wants that kind of distraction for a dude that's not even finna be on the field.
Well, didn't Josh McDaniels trade up for this dude too?
But I'm talking about once it became apparent that he was not a starter.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. I
Like,
got
you could have found a spot for Tim Tebow. They didn't even want Tim Tebow on special teams because it became such a circus. Like, Tim Tebow said, I'll play running back, I'll play tight end, I'll play halfback. He just wanted to be in the league. And the league said no, because we don't want to deal with what you come with for somebody who might not be on the field. That's what happened. All of this is racism. All of this, they trying to buck a black man. All of this, like, get out of here, bruh. Get out of here. Please get out of here. Stop it. The NFL has never cared about anything. If you're good enough, we want you. If you're not good enough, then we don't want you. Shedeur was going to come with a lot. You cannot come with a lot if you are a backup. Could you imagine if Mac Jones had an entourage?
No way. No way. Nobody would take it seriously. Nobody.
Get your ass
Nobody.
out of here.
Yeah, nobody would take that seriously.
Could you imagine if Sam Howell was out here being unapologetically arrogant and was trying to have his way? Nigga, if you don't get your ass out of here. Like, we seen it with Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had to humble himself. Baker Mayfield, Heisman Trophy winning, first overall pick in the same draft class that had Josh Allen in it and Lamar Jackson. He got picked before both of them. He had to humble himself. The NFL doesn't need you. There's only 1,500. There's 752 people that get drafted every year. There's 1,500 people in the league at one time. The NFL has never needed Shedeur Sanders. So that takes me to my next point. Supply and demand. Again, black folks. This was not an opportunity. This was not people trying to buck the system. And not saying that part of that is not true. There's aspects of that for sure. But on the hierarchy, it's very low. The media is a part of this. And the next point is supply and demand is a part of this. There actually isn't that many jobs available. There actually isn't that many teams that needed a quarterback. Think about this. The Chiefs have a quarterback. The Bills have a quarterback. The Chargers have a quarterback. The Bengals have a quarterback. The Ravens have a quarterback. The Lions have a quarterback. The Rams have a quarterback. The Packers have a quarterback.
You can keep going.
And that's just me naming the top 10 dudes.
Yeah.
The Jaguars have a quarterback.
Washington, Cincinnati.
Washington has a quarterback. Tennessee drafted a quarterback. Arizona has a quarterback. There's 32 teams. And all 32 teams, because we draft quarterbacks so much, all 32 teams are in a position, whether you have a franchise guy, you have a mid-tier guy that you just paid, or you have a young dude that you just drafted. The Patriots, Redskins, Bears, Broncos, Falcons, Vikings, all drafted quarterbacks just last year. So all of those teams are not going to take Shedeur, because why would we take Shedeur? We already have a young dude. We don't want Shedeur looking over his shoulder. That erases that. Why would the teams with franchise players take Shedeur? Why would we want a circus behind on a team where we know he's never going to start? That eliminates all of those guys. And then you have the guys that you just paid. They're on 3 or 4 year contracts. You definitely don't want them on the team. You definitely don't want Shedeur on their teams because you just paid these dudes. You paid these dudes $40 million a year. Why would you want anybody to even have the opportunity to ruin that investment? So where was he gonna go? It was the Browns or the Steelers. That was it. Or the Giants. You had three options, bro. You had three teams, dog.
Not even the Giants, because the Giants traded for Jackson Dart. So
But that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about up until that point.
in the beginning. I got you.
I'm talking about the process. The entire time, it was three teams. Three. That's it. Like this idea that the Saints were going to draft Shedeur. The Saints were never going to draft Shedeur. They just gave Derek Carr $40 million. They picked it up. They picked up his option.
Yep.
It was not happening. So it was three teams, supply and demand, dog. So of course, if one of those teams you pissed off, now you're down to two. If those two teams that need you both playing hot potato like, nigga, we don't really want this nigga, of course you're going to go all the way to the fifth round. You only was in competition for two teams. This idea, when you really crystallize it and you get the emotion out of it and you actually use logic, it makes perfect sense why he went in the fifth round. I've seen people, man, they drafted Dylan Gabriel over him. Now y'all know this. Now you can't hide behind that as racist. No. What that meant, what that identified, and what that signaled was none of these guys are good. We don't think none of these dudes are good. We're just going to draft.
We mentioned that, and sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
We mentioned that, early on when we started talking about the draft process. We talked about, not even liking this class that much. Not even, even Cam Ward being the number one overall pick. Somebody had to go. That's basically how I look at Cam Ward going. And that's not to deny the talents that he has, the skill position. But ultimately, Herbie, at the end of and shout out to Trees Top, man, in the building.
It's a conspiracy, right? It's crazy, Trev. It's crazy. It's crazy.
It's but to your point, Herbie, is just when you really think about it, that's why I said I was kind of hoping the Dolphins maybe would have took a flyer on him in the fourth round, but they traded down on the pick. They still could have drafted him. Actually, the Browns picked him after we went for our pick. But they weren't going to bring the circus with them, right? Because the Dolphins are a circus already, so you don't need another clown to add to the clown show. That's just how I was looking at it for Shedeur and the Dolphins.
Bro, I'm telling you, listen, when he didn't get drafted in the second round, it was immediately obvious. The conversation changed completely after that.
Yep.
You draft somebody that you think can start for your team in rounds 1 or rounds 2. That's it.
Yep.
Once you get to 3, the NFL does not think you're a starter. Now, if you end up in a situation where you get forced in that position and you take over the reins, a la a Dak Prescott who was drafted in the 4th round, a la a Brock Purdy who was drafted in the 7th round, and you make it and you take that opportunity and you run with it, cool. But you are not drafted with the intention to be starter. Remember, Dak Prescott got drafted to a team with Tony Romo, who was coming off the best season of his career. There was no intention of the Cowboys ever starting Dak Prescott. Tony Romo, old ass, just broke his back in fucking preseason, bro. The rest was history.
Facts.
So once he made it out of second round, I said, oh, the NFL thinks he's a backup. And then if the NFL thinks he's a backup, why would we want you? We don't want to deal with the circus. We don't. And again, it's not his fault. I'm not blaming Shedeur for this. I'm blaming the media because the media has this and it's their job to chase whatever is going to get ratings. They will beat it over their head. That's why they only talk about the Cowboys. That's why they only talk about LeBron James. And that's why they only talk about the Yankees. Because they draw. They will create storylines out of thin air to get ratings. Shedeur Sanders, they identified this a year and a half ago, that Shedeur Sanders, Colorado, Deion Sanders rates well. So we need to find a way to talk about him every single day. So that is what's going to happen going into any locker room. They're going to talk about him every day. No backup quarterback is worth that. Tim Tebow wasn't worth that. Michael Sam wasn't worth that. Nobody's worth that. Johnny Manziel wasn't worth it. And then that takes me to my last point, which, Rod, you already got to and you killed it. But I'm going to just expand upon a little bit more. Y'all gonna take a responsibility of what, Deion and Shedeur? Like, let's call a spade, bro. Like,
Facts. Y'all, y'all played a part in this shit, man. Real talk.
like, black folks, and I say this respectfully, shut the fuck up. When Deion said, my son ain't gonna go here, my son is gonna move different, we are coming with our power and our force, y'all championed it. I heard y'all say, hell yeah, Deion dictating where his son gonna go. Every team can't pick his son. Okay, then them teams obliged. And they said, we not gonna take your son. What? You not finna take his son? What you mean? You can't do that. But Deion said, don't take him. I know what he said. I don't care. That's racist. Huh?
Ridiculous.
What?
Bro.
What
Ridiculous.
do you mean? What is it? Y'all want apologetically unblack, do it your way, trailblazing, or do you want to understand that there's levels to this and you have to play the game? If you don't want to play the game, that's fine. I'm you know me. I don't play the game. But I'm smart enough to know when I have the leverage and when I don't. Shedeur Sanders never had any leverage. It is not a birthright to get drafted. I'm hearing people saying it's not fair what happened to Shedeur Sanders. No, it's not fair what happens to kids in Gaza who are getting bombed and got to sleep on rocks. That's not fair. Shedeur Sanders not getting drafted. What the fuck? What are you talking about? Are y'all insane? Bruh, this shit, oh my God, bruh. Like,
it hurt me. First world problems. First world problems. First world problems, bro. It's the end of the world that Shedeur didn't go in the first round when almost nobody needed a quarterback. It's the end of the world, dog. You know what I mean? It's
trust
crazy.
me, and I hate how it happens because it puts us in a position where we are taking sides with people that we don't agree with. You feel me? Like, I hate when I'm in a position where I'm saying some things that the other side is saying. But we have to be honest. That's what this community is about. That's why these people come and support us and follow our streams, man. And just for that, man, we got Cap in the building. You already know the homie Cap in the building.
Homie Cap! Hey, Cap, we gonna
And we're going to get to the draft, bro. That's going to be on the second half of the show. Rod is going to break down all the draft picks, bro. He want to deep dive in all of that, bro. We just addressing the Shedeur stuff real quick, man. And let me get this comment from the homie Trees, man. He was talking like Shedeur was Peyton Manning. 100%. And I don't blame him for doing that. I don't blame Shedeur for his demeanor. Shedeur doesn't get to where he's at if he doesn't have the utmost confidence and self-arrogance behind himself. You have to be a professional athlete. But you also have to have self-awareness. Like, I hear people saying, oh, Baker Mayfield was cocky coming out of college. Every article you heard about Baker Mayfield at the combine, which he performed at, by the way, was he was great in the interviews. He was great on the whiteboard, and he made himself accessible. He knew he was the number 1 overall pick, and he still gave deference and however you want to define it, respect to the process as the guy who knew he was going number 1. Now, you can say he didn't know. I take that back. He didn't know he was going number 1 before the combine. He was still competing with Sam Darnold and potentially Josh Allen, but he knew he wasn't leaving the top 10. He was a guaranteed top 10 pick. Josh Allen was at minimum a top 15 pick that year. Sam Darnold that year was at minimum a top 5 pick the entire process. And they still showed the process respect. Jaden Daniels knew he was going top 2 or top 3. He showed the process respect. So these are people who were better than Shedeur Sanders and still played the game. So it really makes you look crazy approaching the situation the way you did. And you got the audacity, and I'm not talking about them. I don't know how they feel, but I'm talking about the fans. Again, we said it on our podcast. These are not NFL fans. These are not college football fans. These are Deion Sanders and Shedeur Sanders fans. They don't understand this shit. And they are the loudest critics. They're the loudest ones. It's a conspiracy, like Tria said, bro. It's a conspiracy. The man wanted to show Shedeur Sanders. What? The hell are you talking about, man? What the hell are you talking about, man? Quinn Ewers got drafted in the 7th round, dog. I don't see nobody crying for Quinn Ewers, bro.
We drafted him. That's the funny part.
I don't see nobody crying for Quinn Ewers, bro.
He had a super slide. This was a guy that people talked about being a potential starter. He was supposed to be a 2nd-round pick. Imagine.
Not a single soul is out here crying for Quinn Ewers, bro. Are you trying to say that Quinn Ewers is substantially worse than Shedeur Sanders? Based on what? Based on what they accomplished in college? You can't say that. We not shedding no tears for Quinn Ewers. Who was shedding tears for Brock Purdy last year when he was literally Mr. Irrelevant? Ain't nobody was shedding tears for him. It's the draft, dog. You get picked or you don't. It's a job interview. I have to make you want to take me. Alienating the very slim number of teams that exist in the first place only is going to, in turn, on April 24th, 25th, and 26th, make it worse for me. Remember, we detailed it. There's 32 teams in the NFL. The large majority of them already have a quarterback. Coming into the draft, it was a 3-horse race between the Steelers, the Browns, and the Giants. He pissed the Giants off. The Steelers said, we not finna have another Kenny Pickett. And then all you got is the Browns, dog. Which your daddy said, we don't want him going to the Browns. The Browns are not on the list. You pissed off the Browns. You turned off the Giants. And when the Steelers saw you, all they saw was Kenny Pickett. Of course you're going in the 5th round, dog. I'm sorry.
And the Browns picked they picked Dylan Gabriel before you. That's what makes it even crazier. The Browns said we can pick somebody else and then pick you. Wow. Man, that's an indictment right there, man.
Nah, man. So that's it, bro. So again, just to recap, the 3 reasons why Shedeur, if you really are able to have a serious conversation about it, and no, the NFL did not flex his muscle, Cap, in our opinion. This was just a situation where it was a rare situation where Shedeur was a victim of circumstances. He was a victim of being propped up as a prospect that he never was by the NFL. The media. I'm sorry. The media made him a 1st-round pick. The media made him a top 5 pick. The media made him a lock for the New York Giants. And that made people think that. But the NFL never thought that. And again, like I said, I see a lot of people are in the chat. Y'all wasn't here at the beginning. I gave an example. The 2022 draft, where Malik Willis, Dennis Ritter, Sam Howell, Matt Corral. Leading up into that draft, if y'all remember, everybody had Malik Willis going in the top 5. Everybody had Malik Willis going to the Seahawks. Everybody saying, hey, this could be the new Russell Wilson. Like, the media needs to sell the idea of quarterbacks going high in the draft. Otherwise, nobody will watch the coverage. Malik Willis ain't get drafted to the 3rd round. The media created that narrative. And they did the same thing this time. They told you. I've been hearing this was a bad quarterback draft last year. The NFL didn't like this draft last year, which is why they took so many quarterbacks last year, because they didn't like this current draft. The NFL is always a year or 2 ahead. They know who's in the pipeline. They'll either wait a year or they'll say, fuck it, we got to do something now because the next year is terrible. So when you actually see this for the whole picture, all the slices of the pizza is together, all the Lego pieces are together, it makes perfect sense. Nobody wants to hear that, especially Shedeur fans. But we got to call a spade, bro. We gotta call a spade, man. So to recap, biggest reasons why Shedeur Sanders fell. Number one, media propped him up and made him something he never was. Number two, supply and demand. There just wasn't that many teams, and he alienated a couple of them. And number three, he alienated a couple of the teams that he wanted, and it made it. He dug himself a hole, bro. So that gumbo is how you end up with going from a projected top five pick to the fifth round, dog. Anything you want to say in regards to that, Rob?
Um, I guess the only thing I could really say, I mean, dude, I mean, you were very eloquent in your points, Herbie. Only thing I will say is that now, just from Shador Sanders' side of things, um, if there was one thing that I didn't like that I saw some certain fans, you talked about the other side. If there was one thing I didn't like, you had those people who were just like, "Oh, Shador got humbled," and I'm thinking to myself, like, no, Shador's fine.
He's fine.
Like, he listen, at the end of the day, all that matters is getting your foot in the door. So
Absolutely.
if Shador Sanders himself felt like he should have won in the first round, if he felt like he should have won in the second round, he probably already had the feel because he's an athlete ready to be at the pro level. So there's a certain level of juice, there's a certain level of internal motivation, internal determination that you have anyway. You are your father's son, and your father has one of the all-time great legacies in the NFL. Shador was always going to come to the league ready to produce and perform. So all this does is just give him a little bit of like, okay, well, all right, I was a fifth round pick. Actually, if you want to be real honest with it, if I'm being real honest, Herbie, this is probably actually a better result for him. And the reason why I'm saying this, Herbie, he's a fifth round pick, which means the expectations are super low. And in terms of the situation he got drafted to, when you think about coaches in the NFL, the only quarterback guru type coach that I'd probably take over Stefanski is the other Kevin O'Connell, up in Minnesota. When you talk about the quarterback gurus in the NFL, Herbie, we have seen outside of the guy they actually paid $233 million guaranteed to. All the other quarterbacks that end up going in Stefanski's system have some level of success, right? The Browns have weapons. Their offensive line was in question. I haven't had a chance to look over their draft. We're obviously going to look over the drafts of the other team. I've only looked over the Dolphins draft for now. But in terms of the Browns offseason, I'm sure they probably tried to make some moves for the offensive line and whatnot. So I actually think in terms of a situation, the Browns aren't even that bad of a situation because you have a proven coach who has taken, dude, he had Joe Flacco looking like a Pro Bowler coming straight off his couch. Jameis Winston had some of his best games last year, and obviously Jameis is going to be Jameis, and he's going to have games where he throws pick sixes and shit like that. But when I look at the situation that Shador is in, he's actually in a really good situation where he's going to have the skill position players, he's going to have the coaching. The Browns have a team that defensively they've been pretty good throughout the past few years. So I actually don't think the Browns are that bad of a situation. The thing that the Browns have needed more than anything is consistent quarterback play because the talent has been there for the past few years. So ultimately, Herbie, I think in the end, this could end up working out for him. The only thing I will say is I just don't know if he'll ever be better than the third best quarterback in that division. As long as Joe Burrow is on Cincinnati, as long as Lamar is with the Ravens, I just don't. Shador just doesn't seem to me like he will ever, with the Browns, no matter who they draft. I don't know if he could ever win that division. I don't know if he could ever get out of that. But that's a discussion for another day. In terms of just what happened, Shador's going to be fine because he's in the league, and that's what matters more than anything.
Nah, facts, and that's what matters more than anything. But in regards to this, and we'll go ahead and transition to the Dolphins draft, bro, because we're running up against it. But we have to address this, right? Like Shador's fine. Shador's perfectly fine, and there were some things that Shador did bring upon himself. His family brought upon themselves that resulted in him falling to the fifth. But one of the things that should have never happened to him was not fair to him. One of the actual things that was not fair to him, and he did not deserve this at all. To get prank called on your draft day by this little bitch and this little fucking loser. And
No.
again, we not finna do that. Oh, he's a young man, and cause no disrespect, but the YT people are gonna run to defend this little bastard. And they're gonna try to say, oh, he's young. This dude is old enough to go sign up for the army and die for this country. Fuck out of here. This ain't no young dude. Talking
We
about,
ain't
and then he
sparing you, buddy. No,
talking about it was a mistake.
no,
No,
piece of
no.
shit.
Me getting lettuce, me saying I don't want lettuce, and then I end up with lettuce on my burger. That's a mistake. Getting a phone number from your dad's iPad, holding that number, and then on draft day, calling a number that you know only NFL personnel has, and then doing that to him, doing that to Shedeur, and they got no, no, that's not a mistake. That was a choice. You chose to be a bitch. You chose to be a piece of shit. You chose to be an asshole. You chose to be a fucking loser. Like, get out of here, dog. We ain't none of that. You a young dude and all of that, bro. Like, fuck out of here, man. Like, this dude's 21 years old, man. You're legally able to go buy a fucking bottle of alcohol, man.
Yep.
It was a mistake. What? Nah, no, 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 no. Like I said, bro, you're old enough to go die for this country, so you're old enough to hear me say this. Fuck you, bitch. All right, man.
And you know what, Herbie? And that's the thing about it, and that's the only thing. That's the tricky part of the Shedeur conversation, Herbie, is because you do know, like, while there are people who obviously will look at Shedeur and his talent, there are people who could be objective about it. There's always going to be that crowd that obviously hates seeing a confident, uh, borderline arrogant black man, a man who has some bravado to him. There's that crowd of people, right? And you never want to be. And I think that kid falls in line with that crowd. Obviously, he felt some type of way. You know what I'm saying? People are gonna feel some type of way about a guy like Shedeur with the way he carries himself. And it just goes to show, Herbie. You know what I mean? But this kid right here is just like, dude,
Man, don't
like,
call him a kid. That he was a legal adult 3 years ago. That dude is 21. That's a grown ass man.
yeah, you're right. You're
That's a
right.
grown ass
That's
man.
that's me being unk now. That's me being unk
Yeah.
now. All you niggas
Nah,
in here. Yeah.
nah, bruh.
Nah,
Nah,
I can go
bruh.
have a trigger buddy. Hell no.
You
Nah.
hey, go buy me a bottle of Don Julio. Oh, you could do that? You're a grown man. Fuck out of here, bro.
Yep.
Like, get out of here, dog. All right,
Right.
man. Let's go ahead and 100%. Cleveland is the armpit of the NFL. That is
So
100%
got it.
so.
What's up,
That
man?
is it, man. All right. Okay. Let's go ahead and
Yeah.
end. Let's go ahead and end and recap the draft, man. Rod, man. Meet your new Miami Dolphins, man. So the floor is yours, bro. First off, how did you feel about this draft? How do you feel about the Dolphins heading into next season? And what was your favorite pick out of the several guys that you drafted?
Well, let me say this, Herbie, because anyone who's been following us, especially for these past few months, I've been extremely critical of this regime. I have not, and I can't tell you how many times I have spoken against Chris Greer. I'm not a fan of Chris Greer. This draft still didn't make me a fan of Chris Greer. However, I do believe in being objective, and I do believe in giving people credit where credit is due, regardless of how I feel about them. I'm not a fan of Chris Greer, Herbie, but I am a fan of this draft. I thought that Chris Greer actually put together for once. We got a really solid draft, Herbie. We didn't have an opportunity because we just found topics that we thought were more important for the pod. I didn't really get into my second and third rounders, but Chris Greer picked a lot of players that I had my eyes on. We've spoken about Kenneth Grant before, and obviously I'll get to him a little later because we've already touched on him. But a guy that I'm really really happy about. And you know what? Before I get into it, let me just say, I mentioned before earlier that the Dolphins had a December, January draft. And I know that there were some fans who were kind of just like, damn, man, we keep drafting linemen. We needed it. If there's anything the Dolphins had holes everywhere, Herbie. And no matter what we did in this draft, there was no way that we were going to be able to cover every single hole. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's impossible to do that. We put ourselves in too bad of a situation. However, when you look at what the Dolphins really needed to do in order to be a team that can compete at a higher level against better competition, we did what we needed to do. And I'll give Chris Greer this much credit. During the offseason, he spoke on the Dolphins addressing the trenches, addressing the offensive line, addressing the defensive line. He did that, Herbie. Picture this: the projected Dolphins offensive starting line just going into next season. You have Patrick Paul, who is conceivably is gonna be taking over the spot that Teron Armstead had. You should probably slot in James Daniel there as a veteran guard. You have Aaron Brewer at center. You have Jonas Savania at the right guard in between Brewer and Austin Jackson. Herbie, that right there is already a recipe far better than fucking Liam Eichenberg and Robert Jones. Like that right there for me, like that right there, Herbie, our starting offensive line to me, our projected starting offensive line for me is already better. All right. So when you look at that, the way the Dolphins have addressed the trenches, we're going to need that if we're ever going to compete against the better teams in the NFL. With that being said, Herbie, let me just get into some of these draft picks, Herbie, because we're talking about meet the new Dolphins. So I think the first guy, obviously, that we got to get to is a guy that I didn't get a chance to really talk about. But I'll be honest with you, Herbie. Jonas Savania was a guy that when I was going through the pre-draft process, I was looking at guy. We would likely probably win defense in the first round. I thought we would get a corner or we get a D tackle, which we did. But looking at it now, man, you look at a guy who's the one thing I really love that the Dolphins did this draft. Not only did we draft linemen, we got guys who are nasty. We got guys who play with toughness. You know what I'm saying? And Jonas Savania was a really athletic blocker. You know what I'm saying? He has strong hands. He's someone who he's extremely reliable in pass protection. He's a guy who can sustain blocks against edge rushers. You can trust in him in the ground game. He plays with quality technique. He has great awareness. Can get to the second level. Anything that you really want in an offensive lineman, Herbie, Jonas Savania can give it to you. I'm super.
Hey,
I'm
hey,
super.
hold on, Rod. Yeah, hey, Soul Planet, bro, you can get the fuck out. Like you could go ahead, bro. We ain't got time for whatever nonsense you going on, bro. All that troll shit. Get the fuck out of here, buddy. Get the fuck out of here. We don't want you a part of the community, bro. Kindly get the fuck out, bro. Sorry to cut you off, Rod. I'm just looking at this bullshit ass
Oh,
comments that this dude is leaving, bro.
yeah, I
That
got
we,
you. Yeah, I'm sorry,
yeah,
man.
we don't coincide with that nonsense. We don't want none of that bullshit that you keeping over here, bro. You can't say black people are fucking crazy when two black guys are talking on this platform, bro. So get the fuck out of here, bro. All right, sorry, Rod, bro. Sorry, I just had to intervene real quick, bro.
Nah, you Gucci, man. You Gucci, man. But look, man, when it comes to Jonas Savania, man, he was exactly the kind of guy that the Dolphins needed, Herbie. You know what I'm saying? We needed a violent blocker. We needed somebody who had quick recovery skills, especially like there were times on tape where I saw that maybe he got his hands out too early, but he was able to recover quickly against a rushing defender. I was super pleased with the pick. I wasn't crazy about what we gave up. I'm not mad that we gave up what we gave up to trade up to go get him. Because there probably was a chance he might not have made it to us. We lost our third round picks. But ultimately, Herbie, especially the first two picks, when you look at Kenneth Grant, you look at Jonas Savania, these were great picks. And then listen, we didn't have a third rounder, we didn't have a fourth rounder, which is something that I'm sure different fans are going to feel some type of way about that. Those are obviously picks we could have used, but I look at Jordan Phillips, Herbie, who was our very next pick after Jonah, who was a fifth round pick. I actually had like a fourth round grade on him. So the fourth round pick we didn't have, we got him in the fifth round. He's another guy. I have a whole bunch of notes on him here. An explosive, powerful player, a one technique nose tackle. He's heavy handed. He as of right now, he has his limitations as a pass rusher, but those are techniques and skills that he can work on. What I saw on him, especially when I was looking at tape of him when he was playing against Iowa, he has a really good first step explosiveness. He's powerful. He'll make an excellent bull rusher. Has a high motor. You know what I mean? And he was a guy that we got in the fifth round, and he's someone that I think can be a key rotational piece when the season starts. So with our first three picks, Herbie, I think we have guys that can contribute right away. And that's something that if you're a fan, even though we didn't have a third or a fourth round pick, we have three guys who I feel like who could contribute right away. And then you look at some of the later round picks, you look at Ollie Gordon, you look at Marshall. And when you get into the late rounds, Herbie, you're dealing with like project players. You're dealing with guys who you don't know exactly what you're going to get out of them. You know what I mean? But I really like the Ollie Gordon pick, Herbie, because the Dolphins, if there's any weakness that we have, if there's anything painful that we have that we just can never overcome, it's 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1, Herbie. The Dolphins on 3rd and short and 4th and short have always been a just mind-bogglingly terrible team. Like, I don't understand what's so hard about us getting a freaking yard when we absolutely need to. And we lost Jeff Wilson this offseason. So I look at Ollie Gordon, who and he provides more than that, Herbie. He's not just a guy who can he's just a big guy. He also has good hands. He's someone that can actually catch in the passing game, so he'll make a very pivotal 3rd round back. Good straight line speed. He has good vision. He's a guy that has decent contact balance. You can expect him to get yards after contact. So look, this is a guy that we got late I believe we got Ollie in the 6th round. But listen, man, I'm actually pleased with the Dolphins draft. Like, when you consider what we needed, and we got a couple guys. Hold on, Jason Marshall Jr. Once you get to the 5th and 6th round, Herbie, you kind of just grasp. You kind of just,
we ain't, man.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't need to go that far. Like,
Yeah,
I'm not gonna go that deep.
we ain't gonna go that
I
deep.
do want to bring up Quinn Ewers, who fell all the way to the 7th. He's probably someone that we could have picked up undrafted, right?
For sure.
But ultimately, Herbie, I think the Dolphins wanted to draft a guy who could sort of kind of be slotted into this offense when Tua goes down. And even though there were times, like on film, I saw that his decision making at times could be questionable.
Yeah.
He is that kind of quarterback. He is a guy that you slot into a West Coast type system. Does the accuracy thing. He has a good arm. He can make all the throws.
He has a great arm. You got to understand,
Yeah.
Quinn Ewers was the number 1 overall recruit coming out.
Right.
When he came out, right?
Yeah,
So,
like, arm wise, yeah.
He has a lot of pedigree. He has a lot of pedigree. So if you could harness Quinn Ewers, which, I mean, I seen him against Georgia. I seen him in big games. Yeah, he gets the bubble guts. He gets the lemon booty.
Oh, that's the thing. The thing on film is that when you can get pressure on him, Herbie, he just falls apart.
He falls apart.
Like, he falls completely apart.
But I mean, he's gonna have. It's a great place to develop if the coaching staff is there, bro. So I wanted to finish off the pod with this, man. Do you actually trust that this coaching staff is going to be here for the foreseeable future, bro? And I have to ask this question. Talking Dolphins, man. Mike McDaniels is on the hot seat. Quinn Ewers works if Mike McDaniels is here, but there's no guarantee that he's going to be here. So what are your thoughts on that, Rod?
Well, here's the thing, Herbie, right? There have been reports that veteran players, like, part of the reason why Jalen Ramsey wants to skedaddle is because reportedly he can't stand the head coach. He can't stand Mike McDaniel. So when you look at, and they're saying that other veteran players, guys who have left his team, guys like Armstead, and you don't know how true these things are, Herbie, right?
Yeah, right.
But I am a big believer in that where there's smoke, there's fire. You understand what I'm saying? And I like certain things about Mike McDaniel. In terms of coaches that I've seen in my lifetime as a Fins fan, he's definitely the most creative. He's definitely been the most productive as an offensive play caller. And, he's a young coach, Herbie. He's probably one of the youngest head coaches in the NFL. He has tons of room to grow. The problem is that sometimes when you're the first stop for a guy, sometimes these guys, they try at a location, they fail, and then they get another chance, and they're much better. And maybe we were just the first chapter in Mike McDaniel's career, kind of like how Dick Vermeil. He didn't have success initially, and then he went to, I think he was the head coach for the Eagles, and then next thing you know, he ended up on the Rams winning a Super Bowl, right? It's just one of those things to where, I hope it doesn't turn out that way. But this, Herbie, is opportunity, right? And the Dolphins, to me, I have no faith in this team, Herbie, just because of years and years of hurt and pain. But in terms of the moves that they're making, objectively speaking, they're moving in the right direction. Because if there's any way that you can get the most out of this offense, Herbie, is just to make sure you beef up the trenches. You know what I'm saying? And on the defensive side of the ball, we're gonna get Chubb back if he doesn't end up being one of the June designation cuts. We have Jalen Phillips returning from injury. Chop Robinson was one of the standout rookies last year. You have Zach Sealer. You add Kenneth Grant next to a beast like Zach Sealer. the Dolphins' defensive line, our front seven is going to have to be the strength of our team because, maybe we end up picking up a guy like Asante Samuel Jr. sometime before training camp. I don't know what they're going to do about that, but our secondary is definitely in dire straits at the moment, right? If we end up trading Ramsey's still on the roster, maybe they don't trade Ramsey before the season starts. We don't really know. But in regards to where the Dolphins are going with Mike McDaniel, Herbie, um, it's hard to really say, man, because there are players who have vouched for him. Obviously, Tua and him have a really great relationship, and you need your head coach and your quarterback to kind of be in lockstep. But this is his chance, Herbie. This season coming up, Mike McDaniel has a chance to change the narrative. He has a chance to alter people's perception of not just himself, but of the Dolphins as a team. Since he's been the coach, Herbie, people have just called the Dolphins a soft finesse team, and we have proven basically that's what we are, right? When the going has gotten tough for the Miami Dolphins, the Dolphins tend to fold. And a lot of that falls on the head coach too. A lot of it falls on their personality, right? But you look at the moves that the Dolphins are making, the Dolphins have in between free agency, in between the draft, we've gotten guys who have toughness. We've picked up guys who have a nastiness to them. And the Dolphins are trying to change that perception. The Dolphins are trying to change the culture, change the identity. We don't want to be a finesse team anymore because being a finesse team doesn't win you championships. It just doesn't. You know what I'm saying? You need to be a team that come January, come December, you can pound a rock, you can play good defense, and your quarterback can make plays for you when he needs to.
Can
And
I make a
hopefully,
point real in
go ahead, go
regards
ahead, go
to?
ahead.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, and you brought up a good point to the point that I want to make, which is maybe this isn't Mike McDaniel's ultimate spot, right? Like most famously, spoiler alert, Bill Belichick was with the
The Jets.
Browns and the
Oh, the
Jets.
Browns. Yeah, yeah.
And then he became Bill Belichick, right? But I think Mike McDaniel suffered from one thing. Mike McDaniels wanted to be a new school coach. And I think what's happening is a lot of people, and we talked about it with the draft, and this applies to Mike McDaniel too. The NFL has worked for 70 years for a reason, with a certain way. The shit is tried and true. Like, we want to talk about the NFL is a passing league and whatnot. What happened? People realize, oh, you need to run the ball to win the fucking championship. Oh, you need to have a strong offensive line to win a championship. Oh, you need to have a strong D line to win a championship. I don't know. That's been the fucking recipe for God knows how long. Like, and I think it happens with coaching too. Mike McDaniels wanted to be a new school coach, wanted to be more lax, wanted to be more chill, wanted to be more relatable. No, dog. You gotta make sure these dudes know who's really in charge, bro. Bless me. Not saying that you gotta be a dictator, but you can't allow people multiple times to just show up late. That's a respect thing, dog. Like that was one of the things where I'm just like, he has multiple players coming in late all the time. You're not in control of your house at that point, bro. Like, just go be an offensive coordinator then at that point, dog.
Right.
Like, it's not all about just designing cool plays and scoring points. That's what an offensive coordinator does. That's their job. You're a head coach. You are a leader of men, whatever. But more importantly, you are somebody who is supposed to manage 52 individuals. Maybe you're better suited for being an offensive coordinator because somebody got to put the. I've never heard Jalen Ramsey say he hates a coach. He said he hated Tom Coughlin, but he didn't hate the coach. like when the guys who historically are cool don't like you, then you doing something, bro. What's going on? Like, where's this disconnect, dog? I just find that to be fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. What do you think about that point of view?
Um, I mean, shit, Herb. I mean, how do I put it, man? I had a thought in my head and then I kind of just lost my train of thought. Maybe the
Man, it
Bears,
happens. It happens to the best of us, dog. You know,
the Bears are catching up.
the tequila is getting to me too, man. I ain't gonna hold you. The tequila is getting to me too.
But look, man. Especially when it comes to Mike McDaniel, Herbie, I think ultimately, right, like you said, like we've never heard of Jalen Ramsey kind of throwing a coach under the bus, right? Like this, I think maybe they said that he might not have gotten along with Fangio, but we found out that Fangio was probably someone with the Dolphins could have really used, right? Maybe could have listened to him more. But
But that goes back to what I was saying. There's a reason why Vangio didn't like what was going on because it's like y'all don't you set a culture. You're a culture setter, right? So if I'm a lax coach, but my defensive coordinator is a hard ass, my players are gonna say, "Man, why you being so hard, bro? We cool, bro. The real boss, he cool. So why you tripping?" And Vic Vangio said, "Man, get me the fuck away from all of this. I want to go to a serious organization that's trying to win, bro, and just put on one of the greatest defensive performances we've ever seen in the playoffs." So,
Well, I mean, listen, Herbie, it goes to the point that you're making, right? Mike McDaniel, when he came into the Miami Dolphins, he came off as a player's coach. And I don't think there's actually any issue with a guy being a player's coach, but at the end of the day,
yeah,
Herbie,
Sean McVay is the ultimate players coach. It's not an issue at all, and his
which is
his
where
teams
Ramsey
love
came
him.
from, right?
Yeah,
Ramsey came from that. But at the end of the day, Herbie, just like in relationships in real life, just like in life in general, you need boundaries. You could be the player's coach, but the players also have to respect you too. And I think Mike McDaniel, maybe he never really got that respect from the players. They might have respected his knowledge in terms of creativity, his knowledge in terms of innovation and X's and O's, but they never respected him as the man. They never
yeah,
looked up to him as you're our leader, you're our commander in chief, which is what a team has to look at their coach that way in order to follow the culture, in order for things to work. Yeah, you might have certain guys that follow the coach, right? Like maybe the quarterback and the offense and whoever. But there will always be other people on the team who, if they don't respect the coach, you'll never get the team to its full potential. And I think the problem that Mike McDaniel has, Herbie, is that he's been too friendly. He's been
yeah,
too much of a player's coach, right? And at the end of the day, Herbie, and this happens in football and this happens in real life. You need a little bit of push and pull. It can't always be all good and it can't always be all bad. You need a balance. And I think the problem that Mike McDaniel has is that he doesn't have that balance as a head coach to where he penalizes players enough or if people don't take you seriously, Herbie, at the end of the day, you're not doing enough, right? You're not doing enough for them to take you seriously. And you're the head coach. They have to take you the most seriously of all, right? Like you're the guy that they are going to battle for. So,
yeah, for sure.
um, to your point, Herbie, Mike McDaniel. I don't know. Listen, I see the kind of players that we're drafting. So at least in terms of player philosophy, there's a culture change. But if the culture change doesn't start at the top, what are we really doing, right?
What are we really doing, man? All right, and with that, man, we are up against it, man. Rod, any last words before we get up out of here, my boy?
Listen, man. Obviously, Herbie, it's a pleasure to have you on. It was a pleasure to have everybody on in the chat.
Man, shout out
Um,
to the chat, man.
You know what I'm saying? We're on our way to 900. We're gonna talk about some of these other drafts. We're gonna talk about some of these other drafts coming up. AFC's rivals, some of the picks we liked and shit. The off season keeps going, man. But appreciate everybody who shows some love. And you know what I'm saying? We're gonna be back at it. You know what I'm
Man,
saying?
we
Much love.
will see y'all next week with more draft discussions. Man, we're gonna break down the AFC and we'll figure out if we're gonna do team by team or just knock out the whole conference as a whole, man. Because I do want to discuss what the Patriots are doing. Like I'm gonna be honest, bro. I just want Drake May to succeed. So I'll be watching like Patriot stuff. This nasty work, bro. Nasty work, dog. I'm sorry, bro. I'm a traitor, dog. But we'll get to that, man. See y'all next week, man. Deuces.
Doses.